Chief, would you start us with a pledge, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now we're getting ready to have a prayer. Y'all may stand. If you choose not to stand, we understand that and we respect your beliefs and whatever you want to do. And no one here will feel any different, so we respect you for that. Wayne, would you please give us a prayer?
Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we just come before you tonight, and Lord, we ask you to bless the members of the council, the mayor, the city officials, and Lord, we ask you to pour your blessings upon each and every one of us here. Help us all in your guidance, the direction you'd like us to go. Precious name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Wayne. Roll call. Sorry,
So just so you all know, Councilor Johnson did send an email and he will not be present this evening. So Councilor Segola,
Here.
Councilor Ellsworth,
Here.
and Mayor Becker.
Here.
The quorum is declared.
Have no modifications to the agenda. Approval of consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second that.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Nita?
Councilor Ellsworth,
Aye.
Councilor Segola,
Aye.
Mayor Becker.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Swing in and Kathy Lorenz. This, I wish she wasn't here again. Sorry.
Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, Kathy Lorenz,
I, Kathy Lorenz,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States of America,
of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Monte Vista,
and the Charter and the ordinances of the City of Monte Vista,
and that I will faithfully perform the duties of office
and I will faithfully perform the duties of office
of counselor, which I am about to enter.
of counselor, which I'm about to enter.
On board, Kathy.
That we can.
And we want to camp out, that's Saturday night.
Come on in and sit down. You guys have something to run now.
And it's Saturday.
Was Scott the one that was gonna do the,
Yeah, I'll take that, Mr. Mayor.
oh, okay.
Unless you want to take it. So essentially, Scott couldn't make it tonight, he had some vehicle issues. Essentially what they're requesting is that for the Saturday night of the Thunder in the Valley rally, that they be allowed to camp at Full Winder Park. Now, they would provide porta potties and such, Reasons coming in front of council, you know, our municipal code doesn't particularly allow for that on a regular basis, but it's a new event, all those kind of things, and so we asked if Scott could come and ask the council if you'd allow that. So that was their request for that Saturday night to be able to camp in the park.
One reminder, that's one across from
The Safeway, kind of close to where they're gonna have the
Yeah,
event.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's, they allowed people to camp there at Raleigh in the Valley, right? At one of the parks they did.
Yes, yeah.
I think so.
One year they allowed camping.
It's not a problem with you, is it, Rob? That would fall on your
As long
department
as they
too.
have porta pots, I'm okay with it. I mean, there is no public restroom facility in that area. As long as they supply porta pots, and hopefully they'll behave themselves.
And clean it up.
Right?
Well, if not, it's on the chiefs.
I was gonna say, is that a problem with you, chief? You're gonna have to be patrolling.
I would echo what he says, I just,
Well, they're kind of fenced in there.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, can't run away very
I
fast.
guess I would worry about the precedents, who's gonna ask next and what are we gonna do next, that's my thought. This is a group of firefighter bike riders, doesn't scare me a whole lot, but what's next? And then what if we say no next time, this time, that's.
and I would agree with that. I think if you do allow it, that maybe in that motion to allow it, or however you want to word that, that it's allowed in conjunction with a community charitable event.
So
And
you
that would,
specify.
that would limit that scope of future ones to community charitable events. That would be the precedence. Once again, the code doesn't exactly say you can do that, but doesn't say you can't. So really a policy issue on your part, but I would suggest limiting the scope of that for those future type events.
Do you or Rob have a different alternative in mind, or?
Well, I think you picked it because of the proximity to their event and everything, which does make sense. It is grassed, it is grassy, which, you know, we have other parks like that as well, but I think based on the proximity, that's probably a pretty good solution. And if you think about it from a downtown development standpoint, it's downtown, so that's kind of nice.
For downtown businesses.
Yeah, you know, Sky High would be a better alternative, except we don't really have, there is an area east of the ball fields that would probably be, you know, appropriate for that, but that's pretty disconnected and distant. And obviously, they could park their bikes, set up their tents, do some business downtown.
I guess if there was any problems and somebody wanted to do it in the future, then we could say that we experienced a problem and no, we're not gonna do that.
Right, and actually, one of the things that we talked about internally a little bit is that, you know, right now, the code doesn't specifically say you can do that, that if the council allows us, that we draft some policies for that, based on those limitations, and also, you know, as Rob said, well, porta potties, because there's not bathrooms at that location, and, you know, Chapman Park, we have rental policies for, and the rest of our parks, we really don't, so kind of widening that out. You know, some of our other parks obviously have bathroom facilities and those kind of things, but like for Chapman, there's a deposit, right, for cleanup and all that. So I think, you know, we need to develop that a little bit further in the future. So I think that based on your action tonight, if you do that, we'll work on some policies for that.
Will they apply to this event?
No,
No.
I don't think we'll get that quite done quite that quickly.
I think it would probably need to include a cleaning deposit if that doesn't happen.
That's reasonable.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
Trying to think, is it 150 or 200? 150? So our standard cleaning deposit for like Sky High is 150. So I think that that's a reasonable charge for that as well. And we probably could take the Sky High agreement that we have and, you know, it's electronic, we could probably morph it out for this event. Because part of that's who's the responsible parties, we get all the contact information, so that if we do have an issue, particularly afterwards, that can be addressed, so.
You ready to all up into a motion form?
I am, so that I don't.
Yeah.
The hours would be kind of messed up. We probably want to address several things in that, hours, park hours, campfires.
Yeah, no campfires.
It'd be something we probably want to address as part of either,
Fires.
I don't know, something we put together real quick, because
Yeah.
there'd
I
be
think
several
we
things
can-
we'd have to use a variance on.
Yeah, I think we can use the Sky High agreement, just modify it a little bit to make sure there's no fires. We'll close that little road that goes to the depot and only have it open for motorcycles. And that'll keep all other vehicular traffic out of there. It is fenced off from the highway, so it does have, the one access, so it would be for motorcycles. And then pedestrian traffic has an access there by what we call the sugar shack, so.
Yeah.
So it's fairly secure.
They're gonna have a beer garden at the event, right? So
At
there
the
would
event
be-
over at Stars,
There
yeah.
would be no drinking in the park.
There is no drinking allowed in the park, any of our parks.
We can draft something up
Yeah.
before the event, just something quick and just kind of cover this
It's
one
the
event.
middle of June.
And then we develop a more formal plan. Because I think we need to have a rental agreements for all of our parks.
Yeah,
Probably not
definitely.
a
Events
bad idea.
expand and stuff.
So if you approve this, we'll work up something really quick for them administratively, and that takes into account the public works and PD suggestions, and hopefully we can keep it.
He said last year too that he was interested in bringing a national rally here.
That'll be an entirely different story, Chief.
That would
Might be
be,
something to think about now.
that might be a Sky High
Yeah.
event out that way or
They're gonna
something.
camp again. it might be-
Yeah, you'd have to move it at that point. And actually, I don't think Fullenwider has a ton of camping, of space or availability. They can park their bikes in there and a few of them can camp there.
Well, if they park their bikes on the street, you'd probably get 50, 75 tents in there, I would
Do you
guess.
think?
If they were, close.
Yeah,
If you
maybe.
thought about, like Fun Valley and the example of the RVs,
Right, also.
all squished together, that probably could work.
Also remember, the people we're talking about are gonna be riding $30,000 Harley Davidsons.
Yeah, they're gonna be right
Probably
next to
hotel.
their bike.
We're probably gonna get a hotel room. There may be a few that wanna rough it, but for the most part,
Yeah, you're probably right.
if you have 10 people there, I'd be amazed.
Yeah,
So,
I kind of think that's it. It's just making it available to them. Okay, can I move? I'd like to move that we allow camping at Fullenwider Park for the Brothers Keepers camping weekend and use a modified Sky High agreement to cover the bases as far as campfires and all of the things we'd like to have happen there.
And if I could just add, and for any future type events, it'd be tied to a charitable event in the
Correct.
community.
And for future types of events, it needs to be tied to a charitable event if we get another request to do that.
I'll second that motion.
Makes sense.
Moved and seconded, more discussion. Seeing none, Nita?
Counselor Lorenz?
Aye.
Counselor Segola?
Aye.
Counselor Elliport?
Aye.
Mayor Becker?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, so this evening we have Jordan Dimmick here. He's with SGM, and he's gonna give you a presentation on the water efficiency plan, the shorter version. I think you all got copies of that for later perusal. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Forrest.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilors. Thank you for having me this evening. I have a slideshow and I've provided paper copies of the report. It's fairly thick, there's a lot of information, so my goal tonight is to inform and present what we've done over almost the last year working with Forrest and Rob to draft. This is the final draft of the water efficiency plan. We'll get into some of the specifics. This is a Colorado Water Conservation Board, CWCB plan, so it's fairly prescriptive, and excited to present to you tonight. And the goal really is to ask that you would consider opening this draft up for public review. There's a 60-day period that's required for CWCB. At the end of that, we would then incorporate City Council's comments as well as public, and then create the final for adoption by the city. So I'll get going, and thank you for this evening for letting me present. So real quickly, introduction, what we're going to talk about tonight is really the purpose of water efficiency planning. What does the process look like? It's a fairly prescriptive process, so just kind of high-level walk through that. Talk about Monte Vista's draft water efficiency plan, what we've come up with this far working together with staff, and then next steps and where we're heading from here. So according to Colorado Water Conservation Board, CWCB, water efficiency is really strategic planning on how to do more with less water. It's practices, techniques, technologies, ways to stretch water supply, and it includes indoor, outdoor, agriculture, irrigation. There's lots of different tricks and methodologies, and there's a whole list of things that we were asked to consider as a part of this plan. And the idea is then for reserve supplies that can then be used for new development, drought reserves, redundant agriculture supplies, and or environmental uses. And for the city of Monte Vista, really the benefits would be, as you know, the water supply is groundwater sourced from the confined aquifer, and so by not using it, you ensure that it stays there for future use. And it also then allows new development. As I'll get into, we've seen a reduction in annual production the city has seen, and population has varied over time, but basically people are using less water, which will allow for Monte Vista's continued growth and the water supplies that the city already has. So looking for allowing that new development with what you already have. So why did Monte Vista pursue water efficiency planning? In 2010, House Bill 1051 basically required that any municipal entity that provided more than 2,000 acre-feet of water a year retail needed to complete annual reporting, and also needed to consider water conservation plan. It's called a water conservation plan originally. Prior to 2005, Monte Vista did have an annual production above 2,000 acre-feet. We'll talk about why that decreased to where it's at today. But in 2010, the city elected to go forward with a water conservation plan. That was completed in 2011, and by statute, basically, you need to revise that every 10 years. It's a 10-year plan, and you need to renew it every 7 years. So we were right at the cusp of the 7-year mark. We started last year, and then this water efficiency plan will then become the new the plan that's adopted for the city going forward. And then in addition, water efficiency really allows the city to have more flexibility with future depletion requirements under the Division 3 groundwater rules. So as you may be aware, Division 3 Water Resource went ahead and they filed a case back in 2015, and it requires that injurious depletions must be maintained and replaced. And so since Monte Vista uses groundwater, all of their depletions that hit basically the water that's consumed that depletes the river needs to be paid back. And so the city has filed a plan, an augmentation plan, a change case in 2016. We're helping with that. But any efficiency basically reduces the amount of depletions that you have to pay back. And so it's a benefit to that as well. So additional benefits, basically before 2005, water production was about 2,000 acre-feet a year. It's now just a little bit over 1,000. So they've cut that in half. that really reduces the city's operating costs from a treatment and pumping, distribution, sizing of pipes, sizing of pumps and services. By using less water, you ultimately are saving operational costs, so that's great. CWCB did provide a 50% funding for this project, so there's in-kind services from the city. They gave 50% and then the city paid for the rest of it. And then really having this CWCB water efficiency plan allows for additional CWCB grants and loans, as well as the Colorado Water Resources and Power Development Authority. So by having this CWCB plan, it then allows you to apply for additional grants and loans. And there are water efficiency implementation grants that can be had. So some of the action items that were developed in here, whether it be education or giveaways or replacing aging infrastructure, you can now, once this is adopted and approved by CWCB, you'll then be able to ask for additional grants and loans if needed. So that's another benefit. So as you'll see here, the light kind of purple blue, those are synthetic diversions based on looking at long-term averages, but you'll see these blue bars, these are the annual production of groundwater each year. And so the bottom here is 0 acre feet, and you've got 3,000 at the top. This starts in 1970 on the bottom and goes through 2017. And so you'll see that prior to 2001, the annual production was about 2,000 acre feet. It varied, but that was the volume of water that was produced annually. In 2001 and then through 2005, the city put water meters on individual customers, and when customers realized and were charged for the water that they were using, it immediately caused a reduction. And so the city's production was cut almost in half. And then you'll see in 2011, even after that water conservation plan, there was continued reduction in demand. So the water conservation plan the city had done is working, the meters are working, and the goal of this was to figure out how do we continue to have more water efficient practices. So the plan in a nutshell, water efficiency planning, it's a very prescriptive process that the CWCB has. In 2012, AMEC, a consultant, came up with a guideline of this is what each entity needs to do, the process. So it's a very detailed prescriptive plan that you follow. And so the first part is to profile the existing water system, basically looking at what are the supplies, what is the infrastructure. This is really the raw water side. Where is there aging infrastructure? Where do you need to look at new supplies? Where are things failing? And trying to get a sense of how can we make the supply side more efficient? What are things that we can do to lean up the water use there? The second is to profile water demands and historical demand management. So this is looking at the customers, the treated side, and figuring out who uses how much water by sector, by customer type, and then figuring out are there ways that we can reach individual groups and or large water users, the customers that use the most, to really try to get individuals or a group as a whole to use less so we can serve more water. And based on these two steps, the third is to basically start the integrated planning. And so you forecast what the demands will be over the next 10 years, and then you look at all the different technologies and look at the different education opportunities, ordinances, things like that that can be implemented, and figure out what works for the city. And so we spent a lot of time with Rob and with Forrest getting to know the system and figuring out what would be acceptable and what wouldn't. So after that, you then, it's an iterative cycle where you go back and forth saying, okay, if we do these things, we'll save this much water. How does that relate to my goals? And you kind of cycle through, here's what I think our goals are, this is how we get there, and then does that get us there? No, how do we adjust our goals or adjust the activities? And then out of that, we then come up with an implementation and monitoring plan, so tools for city staff to use to basically implement when do we try these various techniques and education seminars, things like that, so that we can roll this out over time. We can't do it all in year one. How do we do it over 10 years to get us to where we want to be? And then we are right here at the bottom, the public review and adoption. So we've gone through this cycle, we've worked closely with city staff, and so now we're asking you to consider the plan as drafted, allow the public to review it, and again, the 60-day comment period so that we can make changes and make sure that everyone's comfortable with the information, the plan we've put together. So profiling the system, I'll just step through each of those steps briefly. What we did is we looked at the city's water supplies, the various wells, we looked at parks, we looked at customers, and we got a sense of where are the demands, where are the sources, talked to Rob specifically about are there sections of line or pumps or VFDs, what needs to be updated, what would you like to have. We talked about above ground storage, having treated potable storage so that you weren't always relying on the wells, and that is documented in worksheet A. And so at the very back of your report, there's 12 or 15 worksheets, and again, this is the prescriptive part where we were given an Excel workbook and fill in and talk about what are the specific challenges, where do you want to go, what are the goals. So that's all documented here. In addition, what we got to do is Rob has on his wall in his office a 1978 paper copy of the water distribution system. And he said when he and his crew were out there at 2 a.m. Replacing mains, working on valves, things go wrong, they have a copy of this map. And so what we did is we digitized the map, so we got it into a GIS format with the ultimate goal that someday there will be a water system map, a digital map that you can have on a tablet. And basically we got the majority of the system, all the valves, all the water lines, size, material in. So that's digitized, that's a final product that Rob can use, and basically Public Works will then have that as a platform for continued addition. And the hope is that 2 a.m. a couple years from now you have a tablet and you can figure out, okay, where is that valve exactly, walk back and forth, and you're not looking at a paper map. So we were able to do that. And then we got to water demand. So on a big picture, we're again about 1,000 acre-feet a year is produced. So where does that go? The predominant user is single-family residential. Just over half, 51% of the total water produced goes to single-family customers. The next is the multifamily. So this would be the apartments and townhomes and things like that. The city itself, these are not billed, but they are metered predominantly, uses about 8%. So that's the parks and City Hall and the various city facilities here in town. Governmental, these are non-city governmental, so the post office, BLM office, uses small percent, about 1%. Commercial uses 6%, so this is everything that's not residential. It's actually a pretty small wedge. I thought it would be larger. This is the hotels and the restaurants and the stores. And so it's a significant amount of water, but not nearly as large as I would have thought going into it compared to the rest of the city. And this large chunk here, 22, this is what we call non-revenue water. So this is the difference between what the meter at the pump says was actually pulled out of the ground and the meters at the individual customers. When you summarize all those, there's a difference. And in general, there's 22% of the water that's pumped never makes it to the end customer. And so there's real losses, that'd be cracked pipelines, leaky valves, and there's apparent losses. So there's some parks that aren't metered. There's individual customers who still are charged on a flat rate. And so by figuring out how can we better meter the system, test meters, and do these things, one of the main goals was to reduce this non-revenue water. So this is water that disappears and doesn't really disappear, but it's just unaccounted for. And so if you look at this throughout the year, this is an average monthly across all of the customer types from 2012 through 2016. So those same colors are stacked here in the bar chart. And you can see, the winter usage is 36 or so acre-feet on average during the winter throughout the city. And then you have the big irrigation season here. And again, those orange bars are the non-revenue water. So on a monthly basis, it's proportional to the volume as we would expect. So this is what it looks like on a snapshot. We then also looked at indoor and outdoor. This isn't necessarily metered, but when you look at your winter consumption and average that and then look in your months with irrigation, you can approximate what is outdoor irrigation. And so that's the green bars here. And so we tabulated all that. And this is in the report, but this is getting to understand the demand side and how do we lean up the demands and what are some techniques we can use here within the city. So we looked at the supplies, we looked at the demands, and we had to come up with goals that we thought were achievable and that could be addressed and basically help solve through this water efficiency plan. And the 4 goals were to reduce non-revenue water by 50%. So that's cutting it in half. So that's taking that 22% and reducing it to about 11. Most municipalities strive to be under 10% losses. Again, there's real losses, which are leaks and valves that are open. And then there's the apparent losses. These are the meter errors with the readings and or things that are not metered that get delivered but you just don't account for. So we worked on ways to address that. The other was to reduce overall water consumption by 10% across all customer types. So regardless of which of those customer categories, can we just take 10% and reduce it? And so we have specific activities to try to address each customer group. The third was to utilize existing communications activities to convey the water efficiency information, whether it be giveaways or EPA WaterSense website. There's a lot of resources that are already available that we thought we can just link to the website. We can use Facebook, we can use the city's website and get that information out. So how do we do that? And the last goal was to be fully metered in 10 years. So the parks and individual customers that do not have a water meter, that have a flat rate bill, get them on water meters. And that will get rid of that non-revenue water because then you'll be tracking water that was never metered. And also hopefully get those individual users to realize how much water they use or don't and encourage them to be more efficient. So screening of activities, this is really where a lot of the bulk of the work was with city staff. And so there's the diagram here. It was prepared for CWCB. The bottom is what they call foundational activities. These are the best management practices. If nobody has if you have a municipality and you don't have meters and you don't have volumetric billing and you don't have tiered rates, what are the big conservation or water efficiency steps that you can take, the metering, the tiered rates, ordinances that prohibit wasting water. And pretty much across the board, the city has the majority of these to some degree. So that was a great sign. You guys have planned well and implemented things from the water conservation plan, so that was great. There are a few things we wanted to tweak and add and we incorporated. But the city had a lot of strong foundational activities already. And then there's 3 other categories. Educational activities. This is talking with the customers, educating, explaining why efficiency matters, helping them understand that using less water results in a lower water bill. There's a benefit to them, but that communication, there's kind of one way and then actually dialoguing. So there's different tiers of that, and you'll see the various level, 1 being kind of the broad, and then 2 and 3 is kind of getting more and more refined. The second category is this targeted technical assistance. This is providing giveaways, either through rebates or having drawings or having shower heads, encouraging people to get rain sensor type irrigation controllers and installing those on city facilities. And so what are ways that we can use technology and faucet aerators and low flow shower heads to reduce the water use by individual customers. And then ordinances and regulations. So this is things that City Council would then approve and incorporate into the ordinances to restrict or encourage water efficient practices. And so under each one of these categories, there was between 15 and 30 individual activities. And so we sat down with staff and talked about, do they work and do they not? And the criteria that city staff came up with, the 4 things, is it publicly acceptable? We don't want to ask our public to do something that's going to be dead on arrival. So let's take the things that everyone will accept and let's move forward with those. Second is, can staff implement it? Can they implement themselves? There's coordination between various city departments, but the onus, we couldn't put too much work and too much responsibility on public works staff and city manager when they already have a lot of hats and a lot of jobs. And so is it something felt like they could take on within the 10-year planning period? And again, the second one was, can we implement it by 2027? It'd be great to have all these things, but can we do it in the next 10 years? And then the last, is it economically viable and cost effective? So if the city's going to allocate budget, is going to put money forward, are we getting the biggest bang for our buck? And trying to figure out what's that threshold and what works for the city. So that was how we screened all the activities. I have a handout here, there's a lot of things here. This is basically the answer. I'm going to hand this to you, and I won't go through all of the activities. Again, this is in your report. But you'll see here, these were the activities that city staff selected. There's the foundational, and the first column here is what was selected. The second column is has it been implemented. And you'll see there's a number of things that the city had already implemented before. So these are the things that had been done. We looked at historical water savings, looking at meter data and when it was implemented, and could we see a water savings? In general, we could. And then when does the city want to implement it over this next planning period? And then what is the projected water savings? We looked at how much penetration would this technology or ordinance have, and how many users would it apply to, and we estimated a water savings. And then you'll see the targeted technical assistance activities, and so toilet retrofits or toilet replacements, shower head retrofits. The city replaced a number of water fixtures at its facilities after 2011 in the water conservation plan. The idea is, can we get all of them done, or the majority of them done, over the next 10 years? Ordinances and regulations, there's already a couple that the city has. The water waste ordinance, as well as there's ordinances on trees that are prohibitive. So basically water wasting trees, some of the free adophytes, and there's a couple of trees there that use a lot of water that are already not allowed within the city. And some other ones to consider, such as time of the day watering restrictions, day of the week watering restrictions, green building construction, indoor plumbing requirements, things that they could begin to include. One thing that's nice is state law a few years ago required that the EPA water sense product, so those are what EPA deems or certifies to be low water use. Those are the only fixtures that can legally be sold in Colorado. So going forward, as people replace aging infrastructure and faucets and toilets in their house, they're already going to do that. But the idea is we could kind of codify that here within the city, that's the goal, that's the plan. And then education activities, you can see the ones that were selected, and the city already does a number of mass mailings with its monthly water bills and the annual water quality reports that's required. And there's the social network that the city maintains, the Facebook and website. So these are the things that we wanted to basically develop, and the city selected to incorporate over the next 10 years. So implementation and monitoring, I'm going to pass out another sheet. Again, this is an appendix. But the idea here was, okay, we've selected activities. We need to identify how city staff can implement them. Who's responsible? When is it going to be implemented? And what are the specific activities? So that first table that I handed out was the activities that were selected. There's a number there. And then what we've done here is rearrange them by year. And so the first column says the year of implementation, 2018, and 2019, through the next 10 years. What is the specific activity? What are the actions? Who needs to do it? What needs to be done? Is it a city council ask? Is it something you guys would need to consider? Or is it that staff just can go buy some shower heads and say that they're going to give away 5 in a drawing? And then what entity or staff is primarily responsible for leading that charge? And so the idea here is we've selected it, now let's come up with a plan on how the city can implement it. In addition, we developed monitoring demand data checklists and data sheets. Again, that's part of the worksheets in the back, but who collects data? What data do you need when you're tracking which customers use water the most? Where are trends? What data do you need to analyze and determine that? And we came up with forms too, and a monitoring plan, so that city staff basically have the tools that they can fill out and do and help them complete the annual water audits and check periodically that they're moving forward and implementing these things. Through all this, the good news is CWCB has reviewed it. We got a very strong conditional approval. They said that it was set, they had a couple of minor requests. We've taken care of that here. The other thing is it needs to go before public review, needs to be adopted by City Council, and then a cover letter needs to be prepared for us saying that City Council has adopted it, it's been publicly reviewed and incorporated comments. We'll send it to them for final review, and then they'll sign and stamp. If not, they'll have a couple minor tweaks, we'll make those, and they'll sign and stamp, and you'll have a CWCB approved water efficiency plan. So pretty much through the process, the bulk of it, and now we're just refining a little bit and letting the public know what all has been done and considered. So next steps, again, I've talked about the city day minimum. I'd like to ask you to consider opening up a 60-day public review period, which would begin today and continue through July 17th is kind of what we're thinking. Work with Forrest. He'll need to provide notice of the review period in the Monte Vista Journal. Again, we want to let people know that this document is out there. I've brought 5 additional paper copies that we will leave here at City Hall that people can come in and review and look at, have comments. And then we're going to upload a PDF of the document onto the city website. We've also developed a brief online survey. It's kind of like SurveyMonkey, but it asks questions about water use. What customer type are you? Are you aware that it's a dry year? Are you aware of how much water you use? What do you think of when you hear water efficiency? It's a 5 or so minute online survey, but the goal is to allow the public to provide comment and feedback on the water system to city staff, and then can use that and also educate about the water efficiency plan. There'll be a link. So city staff are going to send notice of the online report, online survey, paper copies that are available here on the water bill. So there's a little spot on the water bill where they can add that. That'll be notified, and then we're also going to use social media to let folks know through Facebook and the city's website that these resources are here, it's up for public review, and we're looking for feedback from everyone. And then again, incorporate comments from City Council, finalize, ask you to adopt it, and then Forrest will prepare a letter and we'll get it to CWCB, and you have an approved plan. At this point, I know there's a lot of information. I try to stay fairly high level. I don't know what questions you have, but I'm happy to answer any if you do.
The only question I have, is there a way to highlight this particular things for the community? They're probably not likely to read this whole thing, but is there a way to highlight the very specific things that are applicable to people in the community? Is that possible?
I think we can. I think we could also take it a step further and maybe do, over the next 2 years, this is the items that we want to try to do, get that out as an educational component of the overall plan. Because one of the things that when we were doing this, we wanted to keep the plan simple enough that we can actually implement things. If you look at our last plan and go through a lot of it never got accomplished. There were things that we've accomplished, but they were all year 1, and they were only accomplished last year. So I want to try to keep the plan as simple and as viable, so it's not just something that sits on a shelf. We can take it down, we can actually implement it, and do a lot of education to save our water, and to also, it helps everyone. Everyone complains about the water rates. We're still producing that 22% of non-revenue water is large. I mean, it's not huge. I've seen bigger losses, but it is still a significant loss that we're getting. So to try to cut that, and a lot of it is education. A lot of our homes have toilets that nobody's really done anything with in years, and they're probably flushing between 3 and 5 gallons every time somebody flushes. And there's a lot better systems out there, and they're not that expensive. So there might be some opportunities for us to actually offer rebates, incentives to go ahead and change out your shower heads and do some things that lower their monthly. It actually affects the customer's bottom line. Their water bills are going to go down. We're not having to produce as much water as we currently are.
Right.
I think we could prepare a 1 or 2 page, not necessarily an executive summary, but kind of a overview document with resources and tables that either, link or you can get as a separate attachment, because really, this is one of those things that you really kind of have to delve deep to
Right.
understand and comprehend. It's a fairly large scope document for a 10-year planning period, and as Rob said, the goal is to make it simple and actionable, and at the same time, CWCB has specific requirements of things
Right.
that need to be in elements and comments, and so when you take the rubric and say, okay, we've got to discuss this, it adds up.
Right, and it's hard to slim it down.
Mhm. But I think we could work with Forrest to provide a page or two kind of overview of what's been done, and what are the outcomes and what are we asking for, and then have that as a companion.
Why we're doing it
Yeah.
would be important to include in there.
Mhm.
Why we'd like you to have a low flow toilet and a water efficient shower head and those things. I think the whys are as important as the whats.
Mhm. Okay.
Well, even the 2 worksheets you handed us, I mean, they're in the back of the book, but they really explain kind of the crux of the matter, what's going on,
Yeah.
what's going to happen in the future, that they can be directed to the worksheets that are very visible.
Okay, that's a good point. And those are tables in the report.
Yeah, they're in the
So,
back.
yeah,
Okay.
but we can certainly pull
Yeah,
those.
someone might not, they might give up before they get to that.
I understand.
There's a lot of information to go over.
Mhm.
And probably maybe, is it possible to put it on the calendar so that it's reviewed annually? So like Rob says, it's not something that gets put on a shelf and forgotten, if it can be on a council calendar to review annually.
And again, my ask tonight is just to open it up for public review. I know there's a lot here, and we got this to you late last week or early this week, and so I certainly understand that there's a lot here to digest. So the hope is that you'd have the next couple of months to pick at it and look through and familiarize yourself with it.
I think what is important to me is the fact that Monte Vista's taken this step, that for our future, as you kids are here, that's very, very important. In 10 years from now, it's even gonna be more important, so to go to this extreme, that's awesome, it's really good. We have to put that motion form forward.
To open the public comment period, yes, probably.
I move to open the public comment period on the final draft of the water efficiency plan.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded to open this up to a public comment plan. Is there any more discussion? Nita?
Counselor Ellsworth,
Aye.
Counselor Segola,
Aye.
Counselor Lorenz,
Aye.
Mayor Becker,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thanks for all
all
your
your
work.
My pleasure.
I want to say thank you for everybody that was involved in that. How long has this been taken on for us?
18 months or so.
It's a
I
few
think we
months.
have finished.
Yeah.
This goes
Thank
back to
you.
the last council too. I appreciate that fact. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any citizen comments? City council welcomes your unscheduled comments. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Council will not take action at this meeting. Anybody have something to say?
Anita's gonna think I lied to her, and which I did. On this, I didn't have anything to come before the council, mayor and council, but on this thing at Pullwater Park, when, Forrest, when you and Rob redo the agreement, are you going to have it that they police themselves? Because, you know, our officers do a wonderful job. But when they're driving around doing maybe extra drives around there, everybody looks the same. So if there's any problems there, are they policing themselves, and then they call the police if there is a problem that the police can take care of? Because if we don't have that, then we're putting a mighty burden on our police department. And our guys are wonderful guys, but they're not Superman. You know, they don't wear capes to be a hero. They wear the badge. And if we put more pressure on them, so if this group will police themselves, and then if there's a problem, get our law enforcement officers out there. But it's just like the neighborhood watch. We're the eyes and ears of our police department. We all need help. So this is, I didn't hear that was addressed, and that's why I wanted to come up and make a comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Any other comments? Okay. Contracts, agreements, leases. First, I believe this falls on you.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I believe that's Mr. Vance.
Sorry, Mr. Vance. I was just trying to save him having to write his cherry.
All right, good evening. Let me flip to the page here. Okay, before you tonight, I have a recommendation of award for the 2018 sewer collection system improvements. In your packet is a letter and a memo and follow-up documentation from RG and Associates, who's been our engineers on these projects for the last 4 years. What this year is kind of the final phase with the monies that we received from the DOLA grant and from the revolving fund loan. So once this project's done, that's going to be the end. We're close. We're not where we need to be. The overall idea of the I&I project was to reduce our I&I going to our Henderson plant so that our daily flows are less than 1 million gallons. If we don't achieve less than 1 million gallons at peak flows, then we could face, well, Reg 85, and that equates to a mechanical plant instead of the lagoon system that we have. So a complete mechanical plant can run upwards between $15 to $17 million. So trying to avoid that. So, so this phase is really a bunch of spot repairs on the smaller mains throughout town, the mains that are in the residential sections. Our first project was to cover all the big trunk lines, the major carriers. We've done that. We've also did some work on the highways, got those all taken care of.
started replacing some of the manholes. This project continues with the replacement of the manholes, some slip lining, which is the rehabilitation of pipe, some actual spot replacement of pipes where they're cracked or they're actually broken. So we're gonna take care of those. The project was scaled back from what we originally wanted, unfortunately. We thought we had roughly $890,000, and there was an error that reduced it by $300,000. So, yeah, so we're getting about a $560,000 project. So tonight in front of you is my recommendation, as well as RG's recommendation, to award the 2018 Sewer Collection Improvements Project to RMS Utilities for a contract price of $560,509.25. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
What is the Henderson plant?
Henderson Lagoon System is our main lagoon system.
What's going there? What is the approximate flow in there right now? If it has to be under $1 million?
Right now, currently this month, we're running about 700,000 gallons a day. However, in the peak season, which is July, we'll push about 1.3. So
And is 1 million the average then?
for a community, the way they figure it, for a community our size, they look at individual houses. Single-family residents should run approximately 100 gallons per day of sewage. We've used the calculation, and we've approved this through the state when we started this project, a calculation of 120 gallons per day. So that's the foundation of our citizens and our taps. So we should be under, like I said, about 800,000 is what we want. So we're getting close. We just did the one on the highway. It hasn't been completed long enough to really have any real useful data. But from the data that we got from last year's project, roughly about 250,000 gallons shy. So we're hoping, we had a huge leak on the highway, huge. So we're hoping that's the majority of it, and then these spot repairs with our manholes, I'm hoping that's gonna do it. Because a lot of our manholes are actually culverts that are inverted with a pipe that runs through, and then a hole cut on top of the pipe, and that's where the sewage is. And so all the groundwater literally goes up through that culvert and into the pipe and goes to the plant, and we have to treat it. So we're trying to get rid of those. It's worked. It's worked. I mean, it's not.
Old school.
It's worked.
Could work better.
It could definitely work better. And the EPA is making things a lot more stringent. I mean, they have their things, and every, a completely different subject, but look at what happened in Flint, Michigan. It's completely changed the scope and as far as what the water's gotta do, as far as the lead and copper rule. So, any other questions?
Who's RMS?
RMS is Brian Maloff out of Alamosa,
Okay.
and they've done 3 of our 4 projects for us. So. Just to remind you on my memos, if you're looking for the motion, it's highlighted at the very bottom. So
That's what I
give
was
me an
looking
idea.
for. You can tell me. Did you see my
Just
thumbs
to tell you.
scrolling? Yeah. Okay, well, in reflection of Rob and his opinion, which I value, I move to award the 2018 Collection System Improvements Project to RMS Utilities for a contract price of $560,509.25.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Award the 2018 Collection System Improvements Project, RMS Utilities for $560,509.25. Is there any other discussion? Nita?
Counselor Segola?
Aye.
Counselor Lorenz?
Aye.
Counselor Ellsworth?
Aye.
Mayor Becker?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. One other thing I did forget, I will post the actual map on our website, and also we will have RMS keep a schedule, so the residents will be able to refer to our website to know where the construction's taking place, because it is point repairs. So they'll be on 4th and Broadway for a day, and then over, somewhere else doing a manhole. So it's all small projects. It's not like we're going from 3rd over to 6th or anything like that. It just hits all over town. So I'll make sure that's posted on the website. Okay? All right, thank you, Rob.
That's where we're using staff reports. Mr. Weaver.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Surprised you didn't object to the 25 cents contract. I don't even know how those, happen, but I always find that fascinating. And just, a note when Rob was talking about what we figured for our average residential use, which is higher than what the state thinks. Everyone in town had low flow shower heads and low E toilets. That would make a difference. So something to look forward to going forward. Sorry, I have a cold. So one thing that wasn't in my report, but a reminder that next Tuesday, the 22nd of May at 7:30 a.m., we have our quarterly meeting with the Board of County Commissioners at Sunflower. So we have those recorded, get together with them and talk shop. The one other thing that on the DS this evening, you have this lovely legal-sized piece of paper, which is basically the draft strategic plan action steps. And just asking that you all take a look at that over the next week. If there's things you have concerns about or changes you'd like to make, just let me know, send me an email. It's in pretty good shape, but certainly if there's anything you have concerns about, let us know. The management team is going to do the same thing, and then we'll try to get this together so that you can have it at your June meeting and we can get it rolling. I think that is all I really have for this evening, unless you have any questions. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Forrest. Mr. Trivio?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Try and be brief here, but we do have a new council person, so I may digress a little bit and bring her up to some speed maybe. Generally, we've got a couple areas of litigation that we're involved with at this point. Forrest and I have had conference calls with the CIRSA attorneys. They are our insurance carrier, and they represent us in those matters, but they sort of expect us to manage with them the case, be involved, make recommendations, and eventually hopefully resolve the case in some way. They have given myself, and I'm sure Forrest, reviews of the strength and weaknesses of the cases and their thoughts about the potential resolution of the cases. And so those will be ongoing areas, but they will keep us informed as to whether the cases are getting close to being settled or not. And if not, they'll go through litigation and we will be involved to whatever extent we need to be. Also, we have done a lot of research on the prayer issue that's come before the council.
Supreme Court case came down a while back, outlining what city council bodies could do in terms of prayer. I met with the Municipal League. I've been involved with them for many years and got information from them as well. And I think we've got a pretty good response to the folks that have concerns about that. And we're going to put an ad and a notice in the paper. Anita's going to do that. And if folks want to get on the agenda and do an invocation, then I guess we'll get them scheduled. But I think we are on line with what the law requires and feel like we've got a pretty good policy there. Just in general, I've been reviewing contracts, independent contractor contracts. We did a contract with Mariana King here to do our grant. I've done a little bit of review on the city manager's contract, which may be coming up at some point with the board. Prepared a lease with the local business assist folks. There are some properties that we're trying to take back. We ended up getting a piece of property from Nora Duran, and I basically check and make sure that it is a good proper deed and that there are no problems with the title, and we did get that back. There's some property at 509 Franklin Street that I'm working with the Gutierrez family. They own that property, and it's pretty bad, and they're really underwater. It's not worth what's, the cost to proceed through the probate proceedings. So I have been in contact with one of the heirs, and he's prepared to convey it back to us, but we've got to go through 2 different estate proceedings to get it back. So we'll be working on that. Let's see, we've got some issues that we've dealt with in city court, and I'll kind of bring Councilman Lawrence up to speed on that, just so she knows what we're doing. In the past, and the law required that if you had, if the prosecutor was requesting jail time, you had to hire or have the town hire defense counsel. That gets awfully expensive, and pretty soon your court is underwater. You're bringing in money, but you're spending more than you're bringing in. So in speaking with the city judge, we've done what you call decriminalizing a lot of things, so that unless the case is serious enough to request jail time, the city judge will act accordingly to handle the case and not require defense counsel to be appointed. So that saves us an awful lot of money. And the other problem with imposing jail time is you got to pay for the person you put in jail with the county. So we're trying to streamline things to avoid having to hire defense counsel and having to spend a lot of money putting folks in jail. If it gets pretty serious, I think one option, and I've talked to the chief about that, is maybe you go to county court and they handle it, and if jail time is imposed, then the county picks up that cost. So we are, I think, streamlining things in that regard, and if there's no jail time, the court will impose a fine, and that comes into the city, and there's no cost outlay. So I think that's making a lot of sense to me, and I've spoken with Nita, worked with her on it. We had 3 trials set last week, and we eventually resolved those matters, and so far things I think are working pretty well with the city judge. And other than that, of course, we had a work session a while back, and I'm gonna be looking at the charter to see what maybe areas of concern and change might need to be there. It's an old charter, but so far, I guess it's worked up to now, but there may be changes that we may need to look at down the road. So that's a lot of things going on, but a lot of the staff working with very well, and things are working pretty well. I don't know if any of the council has any questions at this point. If not, we'll keep plugging away. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, men. Welcome, congratulations. Start with events, just for the edification of the public. It's on your packet, but Neighborhood Watch meeting on Monday, our monthly, is at 6 p.m. at the Information Center, so that would be good. And Crime Stoppers is going to be on the 22nd at 4 p.m. here in Monte Vista. I made sure that happened so somebody could attend. And we have a bike safety rally coming up. Be over at the depot with the Elks and us and a whole bunch of kids, I hope, on the 9th of June, 11 a.m. to probably 1:30 p.m., kind of right there behind Full Winder Park. Stampede update. Probably gonna skip that. So things kind of changed today, so we're gonna skip that, and we're gonna come back to that probably with a much different kind of discussion. But nothing bad, just kind of some things changed today that I'm gonna skip that one. And then National Night Out, our big event that the city managers talked about, and how we're gonna combine that with the open house and Neighborhood Watch and the national event. That one's definitely on your calendar, I hope, for the 7th of August from 5:30 to 8 p.m. right behind us here in Chapman Park. So that's my events update. Crime. You have your field activity report for the month of April. We kind of talked about the quarter last time a little bit. This is just for April. Property crimes were up, but the update on that is Cruz Via. Probably good for, I can't speculate and it's not fair, but at least one burglary in our jurisdiction. He had 2 burglary warrants in Del Norte. So this was a good catch. Wish we could put more together. I do think there's probably more to be put together, but it's tricky sometimes. Generally, our overall crime was about the same. Burglaries were our spike. We were on a pretty good pace for the year. April did not help that very much. Let's hope May is much better with someone in jail. That should be a really good thing. While we're on this, did anybody have any questions or have a chance to look at? It's pretty standard, other than in one category. We're down. We're still kind of staying down. We overall are down. We haven't been able to do quite as much because of training, with the 2 canines in training, three officers in training, but our calls are going up, so it's been a lot less time for our unobligated patrols to just go out and catch people running down the alley. just maybe something like that would happen. So any questions about just the general stats? So the other significant crime update was in Jake's first pay period. He had 2 pretty significant fines, not in quantity, but in who he found the drugs on. So that's a pretty good sign. And then the other dog graduates tomorrow, has to go back to get certified because the certifying individual had some, I'm not exactly sure how to explain it. He certified too many people in a short period of time and can't do that. So yeah, we have to go back a week later. I don't know exactly how that works, but poor guy has to drive all day to spend 14 minutes in the hot box just to get certified, but I guess that's how it goes. But having said that, the dog, he'll be on the street. He won't be as certified, so we'll probably keep him kind of low key, but he'll be on the street starting Monday. And he'll have to boogie back to Colorado Springs to certify, and then his week following. So pretty much every day of the week, starting Monday, we'll have a canine on the street. Our goal, as soon as one more officer gets off of training, will be a swings, like kind of a late swing, so from 11 to 3 in the morning, there'll be a canine out there, so it's good. I had a meeting with Superintendent Webb, and also have been in kind of some negotiation, so to speak, with sergeant schools. I'm gonna have to talk to the county and see what we might have to do to kind of just keep them informed of what we're doing, but they're all in favor of us getting the canines in the schools, using the schools as training grounds, you know, just about everything we would like to do with the schools is thumbs up by Superintendent Webb, so I think that's gonna be good. Schools are huge, 2 canines won't even really handle most of the school, but we'll just break it up in chunks, and we might even try to train with Alamosa and bring 4 dogs in at once and kind of do our thing. Jake did find a significant, he hit on a locker, you know, first bank of lockers he hit on. We opened up the locker, you could smell it, but it was probably home use, probably the parents. So that's interesting. I didn't even go there in my mind, you know, because generally 36 to 72 hours, marijuana will just stand and close. So that's kind of good to remember when you're the young folks. If it's happening at home, you might want to kind of remember you might be carrying that residual to school with you. That's not going to get you in trouble, but it might get the dog looking at your locker or your bag or your shoes or anything else. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So that's my updates. It was really good, busy week, but kind of a rough month. But it was good follow-up month to the rough month of April. Back to training. So Tyler Harford, Officer Harford, is on his own. So there's one down. Officer Zeke Cisneros is in his 3rd phase. He's in his middle of his 2nd phase. So he's got 2 more weeks. Doing great. So we're really happy there. And then tomorrow, graduation. The valedictorian of the local academy is our employee, so pretty good news. He passed his post-test today and will be attending his graduation tomorrow, so good stuff. We'll be full staffed, but still several months from actually having everybody doing the full job. But much closer than we were at the first of the year, so pretty significant. A quick update, FPPA, it's the Fire and Police Pension Association, really had a corner on the market years ago, had some problems, and has really bounded back. That's their entire mission, is to provide retirement and death and disability benefits for police and firemen. I don't remember exactly the numbers, I didn't write them down, but it's generally about 3/4 of the state they have in police and a little more in fire. Denver's a big chunk of that. Aurora's kind of on the hooks. The reason we're looking at this is there's some portability in their plans, and one of the things that we're hoping for is retention, some possibilities of expanding. Officers eventually it'll be mandatory that they come in and they participate in this program, and it would force officers that are young, don't quite understand where their money probably should be going, and in 20 to 25 years, basically at 55 for a young officer out of the academy, if we provided this for them, they'd have a really good retirement, get out of the job before it kills them, you know, for all kinds of different reasons. And it's going to be less kind of helpful in the short term, but in the long term, I think it's got some real benefits to take care of our cops, have them be able to transfer. And could be a positive and a negative, but a lot of times I'll hear guys like, well, I can't, I'm not vested, or I don't want to leave this agency for my retirement. Well, FPPA travels with you. If the agency you want to go with has FPPA, you just transfer right in, nothing changes. It's kind of like having a statewide, and that's their goal. Whether they'll get there, who knows, but at 71% of the cops already, and I think it was just a little more for the fire. That's pretty good. And they had a huge 2017, and they're already significantly adding numbers in 18. So they're on the bound back. They're 120% funded, so they're way overfunded. A lot different than para. I mean, it's really positive push for the young guys, and even the ones that are already here, the 25 to 30-year-olds. It would be really good to push them into this. It's a good retirement, it's guaranteed, and I think it would keep them here for the short term, and even if they did transfer, they would be able to just kind of continue. I think one of the things Monte Vista has to remember, we are a partial training ground. That's just how it goes. But to have them make decisions that are still good for them and help them retire, it's still serving the community, it's still serving, the state, and hopefully, and it's just state, it's just Colorado. FPPA is not nationwide. It's a local. It's designed just to protect our first responders in those two categories. With that, what we'd like to ask you is to start this. We need a letter. It's a non-binding agreement from our board that would allow us to look at it further. I don't even think it would require necessarily any kind of vote. I think it's just a head nod that we could have this non-binding agreement that says that we'll look further at our plan, put a timeline on the board for when we could possibly actually have this done and enacted, and they meet with every officer individually and kind of tell them exactly what it would provide for them, what it would look like now and into the future. And then, what's the last thing? There was one other thing that would have to happen. Oh, then we'd have to make a decision. Individually, we'd have to make a decision and come back to the board with the official, yes, we're gonna accept FPPA, and then we just finish out the timeline. Everybody would sign or not. The good thing is about it, one person could sign or everybody could sign. There's no requirements. You could stay on the current ICMA plan or you could accept the FPPA plan. However, everybody knew from the effective date on would have to become part of FPPA. That's kind of their hook. Once they have the city, every new officer has to be on the plan, and that's kind of how they fund it. And unfortunately for our officers, the only downside is they have to put in a little more because Monte Vista was once part of it and opted out, so there's a little bit of a penalty for us to get back in. So we would have to pay that. It's about a 2% over the life of the plan, so it's almost like the poor new guys are going to make up for the fact that Monte Vista didn't play for 20-some years. So
Does that penalty eventually go away?
no, every officer that's here now would be stuck with that. Every officer coming in would not have that. So it kind of goes away. It goes away for anybody coming in. So nobody new would be penalized. It would just it's like us. If I opted in, I would have to pay 2% more until I retired. But I get that money back. It's not like it's not any kind of penalty. It's just they're making sure we're funding ourselves because we haven't been involved for a period of time. And it actually gets put in a separate account so you can actually kind of see it. And it's dealt with after tax. So it's kind of a good thing. It's just a little hard when you're asking an officer to put in 14%. It's a big chunk. But it's also pretty much a solid defined benefit in 25 years. So that's pretty significant. And some of the numbers were good retirements. It was 100+% of your ending income. Especially if you dropped and stayed till 57 or 60. I mean, it was 115, 130, 140% of your salary when you quit. It's a good plan. It's pretty powerful. So anybody new would have 10 and 10. The city would pay 10, officer would pay 10. Us here now, if we opted in, we'd have to pay a little more. And it would be until we retired for those few of us. But the long term would be very good, I think, for the city. So that's that. We just would like, if you guys would be okay with that, we'd like to start the non-binding piece and kind of get a timeline. And the timeline's probably 9 months. So before anything, the sooner we could say yes to FPPA, we're still looking at probably March or April before we could ever even go effective. So there's a lot to be done and discussed. That's just kind of the 30,000-foot view, so to speak. And we'll get you a lot more information. But so the HR manager, Forrest, and I sat through a presentation about 45 minutes, and I think it's pretty positive long term. No question I would take it if I was younger. They kick you out at 55 unless you do a drop program, and then you have to go at 60. So that's kind of a good thing too.
Yeah.
But you're ready. I mean, you should be able to retire. If you do the right thing for 25 to 30 years, you'll be more than in a good spot. And hopefully still able to go do whatever, do a second job or goof off or whatever. I kind of did the canine update a little bit out of order, so I think I'll just skip that. And then code enforcement, so busy. I don't know if Jeff, you want to come up, it's up to you. Jeff's plan was to kind of lay low, and I won't steal Rob's thunder, but the free cleanup was pretty much a success, and Marla will probably speak to some numbers, they're pretty awesome. But we stayed low on kind of the cleanup. For the most part, Jeff's been kind of identifying some properties that he's gonna go after because they chose not to participate, or they did. We'll see how that goes, but the city trash day hopefully kind of helped out the city in a lot of ways, and it should have, because his numbers are big as far as how much trash was taken to the dump. Dog at large, I tell you, I don't know where these dogs come from, but there's days where Jeff is running ragged, and literally they're smarter than all of us. It's pretty hard to catch any of them, but the ones he does, they deal appropriately with. But for the most part, he's able to take them home. He knows just about every dog in the city, which I don't know how he does it, but it keeps him busy. But I do think our discussions about some thoughts about how we regulate our dogs would be a good idea. How many times do they get out before they need to be fixed, and how many times do they run around without any repercussions? And I know we can write summons, but that it doesn't change the fact that you got to chase them down again. So it would be something for a study session someday maybe. And then the last that I had, unless Jeff's got something to add, was water mitigation. We've had a long talk, and I think we're kind of in an education mode, at least for this coming month that we're in, if not a little longer for some, because it is surprising the number of people we talk to that have no idea. So if you could tell your neighbor, tell your friend, tell the person you see, they're just either a little confused, or maybe just don't really have access to the media that we're using. But it really is, I think, an education, or they're just totally blowing smoke. But we seem to have a lot of people that just are like, really? Oh, okay, I didn't know. And we also have a lot of, it's really hard for Jeff, because there was 13, I think, exceptions in 1 week where I have grass that I need to water extra, or, you know, and I'm not saying that the exceptions were wrong, but it's really kind of tough for us to know as you're boogieing down the street, if you're on the wrong side of the road, but you're watering, and it's really kind of tricky in that respect right now. What kind of garden you have, the whole thing. So I think maybe in the future, we might kind of look at this maybe a little bit differently and kind of decide how we're going to educate, maybe even right now, as part of this education, maybe make a plan for next year right now, that this is gonna be every X day, and this is what it means, and these are the only gardens you could possibly have. And I'm not saying let's make this whole season an educational program, but I think the more we kind of do that and make it part of our policy, because I don't think, regardless, I think of the situation of the water, and I know we're in probably the worst drought in however many decades, is it really going to change what we necessarily want to do? If we're going to try to limit water, and your lawn can survive on 3 days a week, why would we ever go back to 6 or 7 days a week? So maybe this is just one of those years where we really take a big look at things and try to give Jeff a little bit of guidance, because he's like, I don't even know who to talk to or what's going on.
What about, like, I was just thinking, you know how in front of the houses they have those Vivint signs because they have security. What do you think about something like similar, like with maybe a color code, like a green or orange that says, hey, I have a garden?
You know, barring the expense, I think you're onto something. You know, how do you identify an address? Maybe we could change the water bills so that one color is printed, one side of the road is printed on yellow and the other side is printed on white. And if your bill's white, don't water on Tuesdays. I mean, I don't know, but it's something that's not super expensive.
Can you just add it to the? Well, I just got my water bill, and I expected there to be something on the bottom of the water bill saying this is when you water, and there was nothing on it.
Or just even.
We will correct that.
Yeah, that was supposed to be on the water bills. I'm surprised that it wasn't, so.
Well, but everybody gets those, so that's their notice technically,
Yeah,
right?
and that would tell you can water those days,
Yeah.
and then you don't have,
And then if you tell them that you keep a running log of
whose doors you're going to. You know, and the second warning and the third warning, then they're gonna get a penalty.
Kinda like the
and
dogs.
They're not like the dog, you know.
Poor Jeff. Jeff's kind of worried about his weight loss plan, so. That's what he told me. He's like, this is terrible. I'm losing weight on it. You got anything?
Just a couple things. If you need me to come up, I'll come up, but
The
honestly.
protocol, come on.
Oh,
Come on.
I will. Yeah, I'm talking about that weight loss. Yeah, I'm here.
She's in there.
Just, sorry, excuse me, counsel. Just a couple things. Number one, I'll stand up here because I don't hide from the fact, if anybody has any questions, concerns, or whatever for me, please don't be afraid, because I think the chief said it best. I'm not out there to write citations. That's not my intention. I have taken a lot of dogs back home. Kathy knows there's been some come down to the shelter. Some of the biggest complaints is the water. I gave the chief a little update Monday, no watering day. 11 homes were watering that I drove around. Some of them weren't home, like 6 of them, was it? I had?
6 or 8.
6 were around that I got to speak to. They were elderly, majority of them. They were confused, they had no idea. I wasn't gonna attack them for it. I just tried to let them know, things like that. The good updates, so the water, if any questions, concerns, please hit me with it. I'll take it all, because I think the best thing, Chief's a little bit humble. For what he does and the way he keeps the guys in line and stuff like that, really commend him. Because believe me, when I'm out and about, I don't just look for the dogs, I try to back these guys up. And if you'd have seen what they've done this last week with one gentleman, he said, it's amazing. So, that being said, the other good things in the community, there's a gentleman we work with now with train cars and stuff like that. Here, the 21st, 2 of them are supposed to go. We have a little lead on some more cars with a little red tag on the back, how flammable it is, and I'm attacking that as well. There's also a gentleman sitting in here and his wife that helped us out with purchasing an eyesore. Not gonna give the name, not gonna embarrass them, but you'll be happy to know that one of the eyesores in town is slowly gonna be disappearing. That comes from just follow up, follow up, follow up. But that leads me to my biggest point. Some of you, please, 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 bury your grudges. I drive all around and speak to everybody. If you just talk to people, you'll help out greatly, instead of just nitpicking all the time. And the people in this town are wonderful. People that are bad, they're bad. He'll get them. Not me. So, other than that, if any questions, I just want to come up so I can answer anything. Oh, and the last thing, I almost forgot. If we could maybe propose something, the cats. So many feral cats around.
Yes.
Maybe we could give a little bonus from the city, that if someone brings them in, we can get them spayed and neutered maybe somewhere and give them like a gift card of $10. So we cut down the population of the cats. They are all over. So, other than that, that's it. If anybody's got any questions.
Make it easy on us.
Yep, cool.
Thank you.
Hey, Ford, is there just a thought, if we had like a card or something that had the dates, time, water, water, all that, we could put it on just a wire or something, so that they can have,
Just hang it on the doorknob?
hang on the doorknob, or just when he stops to talk to them, so it's printed, if they don't have means of doing
You know, I think what we're gonna do, Mayor, I apologize, that was supposed to be on the water bills this month, I don't know what happened there, but I think what we'll do is a postcard, and we'll just do a general mailing, and, you know, that's not the cheapest thing in the world, but, yeah, there are definitely people that don't listen to the radio, they don't do anything on the internet, and, you know, they don't read a newspaper, which, you know, I'm not sure how those folks get information on the world, but that's fine, but I think that, you know, I'd echo what Jeff and the Chief are saying. We're really doing this as an educational thing. We're not writing people citations. So when they're contacted, it's like, hey, did you know about this? I went and talked to one of my neighbors, and she was a really nice lady, and she was watering on Monday, and I'm like, hey, did you hear about that? Oh, no, and she was fine, and, so I think we're gonna do postcards, and we can get that together really quickly and send those out to everybody. You know, I was hoping to save that expense, but I think enough people don't get all of our media that we try to put out, so we'll probably do that.
Thank you.
The other thing, guys, that I want to say that I think that, I noticed on Monday, that the park from, across from Baldo's was watering on Monday morning. So I think it's really important to practice what you preach.
I also had somebody come into the office and told me that we were, I guess, watering the park over here in the sun or something, you know, and they were like, oh, I think the city needs to do the same thing as we do.
Well, we will be watering here today, because we're not gonna honestly pay somebody overtime to water in the middle of the night.
Right.
But we can try to adhere to the days the best we can, but then just as the flip side of that, when you get called, people say, you know, that park over there doesn't look so great, that grass is so awesome. You know, realistically, you know, I don't know if you know that, we aren't generally able to afford fertilizer. I think we did last year, but, you know, so we will do our best. You know, I had this discussion with the school district as well, you know, and technically the school district is exempt from pretty much everything, apparently, but we had a discussion about conserving water as well, and they said they would try to do that, and we'll try to do the best we can as well.
I would second that, and we do have a couple of sprinklers that have been changed. So yes, they did water Monday, so they won't water Monday from here on out, so. It is kind of a learning process for all of us.
I trust in you guys are awesome.
Well, we make mistakes too, and this has been a little more difficult than I originally thought it was going to be. So we'll chalk that up, and we'll make sure we don't have that problem in the future. But for my report, you have my written report. We're I'll just kind of go down the line. Parks, trying to get into summer mode, so I'm still trying to get things greened up, and we did. Looks like we got another opportunity this year, another donation for some fertilizer. So we will be eventually getting some fertilizer on our parks.
Cool.
So a big shout out to Stones up there in Center. They've been wonderful with us, so we really appreciate that. Streets have been kind of running all over the place. Been spending a lot of time over here, City Hall, doing some work for the PD. We're gonna be finishing that up this week, and then with this street and probably some of the water guys next week, we'll start working on the marquee at Sky High. We'll be taking the old one out and retrofitting those poles and getting the new one installed and getting it ready for electricity so we can go online.
Cool.
So, doing that, filed the application with Excel to run the power, so it's in the process, but like I said, we'll be hitting that pretty hard next week, and then first part of June with a combination of streets and water. I'm gonna be hitting the Memorial Park really, really hard. We're gonna finish that grant up, which will be the completion of the benches, the shade structures. We'll do some work on the trail and get that all done, and just kind of get that all phase 2 done, so the community fund and the other folks that are involved in it can start working towards phase 3. So that's coming up. Pretty much everything else has been just kind of gearing for summer. We got the Veterans Wastewater Plant is back online and starting to discharge again. We do that every April. Things that I've been working on, been kind of running all over the place. We had several meetings today on other events. Met with the Potato Festival folks, we met with Taste of the Valley. So it's been fairly busy, doing some meetings and stuff with the chamber. So the big ones that I wanted to talk about, you approved the sewer project, our water project. We're gonna replace that line. Actually, I'm gonna do away with the line over off of Batterson I think we've come up with a plan where we can simply vacate that line and still provide service to the residents in that area. So I think that's what we'll do, we'll save some money that way. So we'll be able to do that. Arbor Day, thank you, Mayor, for attending that, giving the speech. It was a lot of fun. Nice having little kids over there. So I thought that was a success. We helped the high school with the Pirate Pride Day. I think that was a really good event. Newspaper did a really good job of covering the different places and the different areas where the kids were. So that seemed to go pretty good. Our cleanup days, I think, were a pretty good success. It's always amazing that we get fairly consistently real close to the same amount of yardage. So we did 10 30-yard dumpsters and about 8 truckloads of limbs, so roughly 800 cubic yards of debris was hauled out of town. So that was good. So, and we do that pretty good every year, so been pretty successful. So
How's your employee feeling?
he's still hurt.
See?
He's still a little sore. We did have one little incident. We had one of our employees fall through an individual's trailer. The individual had a hole in his trailer, didn't tell him, and had shingles over the top of it. And in the trailer and into a bucket of a loader, so didn't feel very good. So, but he's doing all right. He's at work. Still wearing a brace on his wrist, but he's doing okay.
Right here.
Any questions?
Chico? Rob?
Yes, sir.
Go.
Oh, thank you. Oh, forgot all about that, yeah. Quick update on the status of Chico Camino. Been doing a little bit of work on redoing the cost. We have plans that were done back in 2005. So I've been using those plans and the cost estimate from back then, which was roughly $260,000 to do a dirt road. Trying to convert those numbers into today's prices. So some of that work was actually done by the county, so that's where I'm trying to see. Things have kind of changed since then as far as the county standards, and they feel they're competing with contractors, so they're not as open to doing work for other entities. So still working on that, we'll see. It's really, for the citizens, it's really more of a process than just being able to sit there and just taking my crew and going out and grading up the grass and calling it a road. So it's a lot more involved. Need to get a survey done, make sure that we have a full right-of-way that we can actually utilize. There's portions of it that are cities, but there's also a section that we need to make sure we have the correct right-of-way. Survey needs to be done. We have to excavate all of the topsoil, bring it down, and then we need to start talking about the infrastructure, because it doesn't make any sense to start a road and then once you have it built, tear it back up to put your water, sewer, storm lines in, and then try to rebuild it twice. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. There was nothing, budget was adopted for 2018 before this discussion and this council took over, and that was not a part of the 2018 budget. So it's going to be a discussion for our 2019 budget and how we want to proceed with that. Okay. Questions on that? So, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob, appreciate that.
Good evening, Council. Welcome, Kathy. So a couple things that are not in your report that I wanted to touch on and that I forgot to add to your report is they did receive an ACLU request for open records request. That ACLU request came in and they had asked for a copy of our standing order of Senate Bill 17-1338, which is the Senate bill that went out for the jail time and the advisement time on how long that a defendant can be in jail before the clerk is notified, the courts are notified, and before they can be, or before they have to be advised. They also wanted a copy of the warrant showing the Senate bill language. We had that put together. I made sure that Judge Zollers looked at the request. We looked at the standing order and the warrant and sent it to him. So it was an ACLU request that went to all courts, municipal courts. So it wasn't just Monte Vista's, it was all municipal courts that got that ACLU request. The other big thing that's coming out is the liquor rules and regulations are getting ready to change. I'll be attending several classes and learning the new regulations, and I will be updating you as you will be the liquor board. So you will have to know those changes as well when approving or denying a new liquor license or renewal. Those rules and regulations that are coming down are going to allow convenience stores and grocery stores to sell liquor. It's also going to change some of the special use permits that we do currently. Those are the two big things that I had that I forgot to put in the report. The other thing is on June 1st, the city clerk's office will be taking all court payments. So the west side of the building will be open for court and clerk business. So all court payments will now enter through the west side of the building and make the payments with the city clerk's office. I have hired a deputy clerk. Erin Bonnemeyer is who I hired as my deputy clerk, and she will be starting approximately around June 10th. Take a look at the new city webpage for the municipal courts. I've updated that webpage so people can go on to the city webpage and they can pull up the municipal courts. They can see the docket. The dockets won't be posted until the day prior to court because there's a lot of changes that happen within a docket. People come in and pay the day before court, so a lot of things happen. So that docket only gets posted the day prior to court. But the new webpage shows, basically we'll walk through what you can expect when you come to court, what you can do to not have to come to court, and how, when, and where to make a payment. So we have updated that as well. And that's all I have for you this evening. Do you have any questions?
Good evening, council. I'll keep this one brief. So, IT has worked with the Parks and Rec Department to take some aerial photographs of the Sky High complex. I believe that will be used for some more stampede planning information. We've been working extensively with the police department. We had some issues with the watch guard system, which is the body camera system that the police use. We have solved that issue and we'll be hearing back from WatchGuard, the company, that will have a more permanent fix than what we've put in place. Also with the police department, City of Alamosa is decommissioning its fleet of tough books, which those are the laptops that are mounted inside the police vehicles they use for running addresses and license plates, things like that. So we're decommissioning from the City of Alamosa and recommissioning here for the City of Monte Vista. We've put encryption, antivirus, and a VPN tunnel back to the City of Monte Vista's network to allow for CCIC and other connectivity with police software. With the City Clerk's office, we've helped to move some of the computers that they had, including adding an IP camera installation for the court and in the clerk's office. I would hope that would promote safety and security. Other than that, we've continued with the patching of computers and our typical business as IT. Any questions?
They've been amazing. That's all I can say. So most departments have had cars and computers in the cars for about 10 years. We got our first one today.
Pretty exciting.
So anything an officer can do in this building, he can now do in his car. It's not always super perfect, but it's pretty darn good. They did a nice job. And it's in our budget.
I think it'll work great for you
I
guys.
did too. Nice work.
So,
Very good.
that's awesome. Thank you. Well, if any questions, thank you.
This is for your discussion when you get to the
My
next section.
discussion when we get to it, okay. On seeking letters of interest to form a committee to work on revisions to the city of Monte Vista charter. Man, didn't even get the sentence out, I had one in my hand. I'll go ahead and read it. To the mayor, city council, city manager, and staff. This is from Marina Bowser, by the way. I would very much appreciate being appointed to the committee to work on revisions to the city of Monte Vista charter. With the exception of about 5 years in my early 20s, I have lived in Monte Vista all my life. I've been self-employed in Monte Vista for almost 35 of those years. I've been on numerous committees and boards over the years and enjoy working with people. I would be glad to answer any questions any of you might have. Thank you sincerely, Marina Bowser. So seeking letters of interest to form a committee to work on the revisions of the City of Monte Vista Charter, that is open to the community. I think it's beneficial, as I keep saying, it is a community involvement. That's what we're about. It's not about what I say or anybody up here says. So,
And just a little addendum to that, the city charter was actually written in 1922 and has had a few revisions over time, you know, just different things that different councils or mayors or people would do, but we really felt like it was time to update the language, not necessarily change it in any great way, but most certainly update the language and make it more appropriate to today. We really would like your help on that. I'm going to help with it. I'm sure Raina will help with it. And anyone else who would like to, please submit a letter and let us know. We'd like to have, I don't know, 6 or 7 people maybe, and we would probably meet once a month to do that with Forrest and Mike Trujillo would be would be a part of that. So if you have any interest, it's just kind of interesting. If you haven't gone online and read our city charter from 1922, you might do it on some boring Thursday night because it's interesting to read the language. And we'd appreciate anyone's help.
And Mayor, I spoke with Forrest today and told him that he had asked for a couple of council members and I would be happy to volunteer to do that as well.
there you go.
Marco, she told me the day she needs to learn to say no.
I'll go online and read that.
There you go. And if you have an interest, submit a letter, and we'd like to have everyone, you know, everyone's ideas and thoughts on that.
Just so if I can add on that, councilors, so the intent is to get letters back before the first meeting in June. See how many we have. We're trying to create a commission with approximately 6 members. To get the letters back, the council can consider those and make appointments like your other boards and commissions.
Do we have a process set up to kind of when we keep 6? Because we get like 20.
I hope we get 20, that would be a great problem.
That would be a great problem to have.
It would be.
Hopefully we
It
get
would be a
there.
great problem.
So, letters of interest by the June, what's the date?
First. Probably the first.
June 1st?
June 1st. Gives you a couple of weeks.
So any other, Victor, do you have anything?
Oh, I don't.
You don't? Kathy?
No. Started working on the gardens downtown, and anyone who likes doing that, they need help. There's a lot to do.
And I'm still looking for volunteers or groups to help with the xeriscape space that we'd like to get put in the little piece of land that we were given. And we'd like to xeriscape that and use it as an example. So if you're creative and have an idea, get in touch with Forrest and we'll do that.
Okay, real quick from my end, the bull riding thing, I can't remember what it's called. Burst and Sons, Spring the Valley has been going on, and I think people kind of forgot about it because last year it was so frigid cold when it was going on. But they've had a lot of good things going on out there, and it's been a lot of fun to watch, especially the little kids riding the sheep again. It's been awesome.
Sunday's the last one.
Sunday's the last one is.
Sunday's the last one in,
Yes.
in Monte? Okay, so, yeah, it's a good time, so I'd recommend, if you're looking for something to do on Sunday, go watch it. And then I have a question for Chief, did anything come the other evening?
Just found where the car went, but no, they didn't leave.
You folks be diligent in paying attention in your neighborhood. I was not incognito, I was standing in my driveway, watering my grass, and because I seeded grass, and it was my water day though, actually, I think. But I was just out with a hose end, watering, and I noticed a car pull up on 2nd Avenue from my house, and I just looked over my shoulder and seen it. And 2 guys get out of this car, slam the doors, and they strolled over to the Legacy. I'll rat them out. They went to the Legacy and were checking the doors. And of course I was on the phone with the PD and got my extra help that was driving down the street to do a little investigation. We got a plate number and everything, but unfortunately we didn't catch them, but they were probably quite shocked that all of a sudden they're being watched. But just being diligent, paying attention to your surroundings is so important. So.
They kind of parked in between 2 houses, so the guys didn't contact, they could have done a knock and talk, but they didn't, but they hung around a while and the car never left, so I don't know what the deal was.
I wasn't
Good call,
being,
though.
I really wasn't being stealthy, man. I was standing right out there in the light. So, if anybody, if there's nothing else, shoot, what's the first, I'm sorry, of the month, on the calendar? Next meeting?
June 7th.
June 7th. Meeting adjourned till June 7th. Thank you all for being here tonight. Appreciate you.